What if genetically modified people became the norm? Imagine a world not so far into the future, where genetically modified people are not an exception, but the norm. The boundaries of what it means to be human, once set by the natural role of genes and the quiet calculations of evolution, have been redrawn by the deliberate hand of science. In this future, the decision to enhance, adapt, or even dramatically alter human genetics is no longer reserved for rare cases of medical necessity or the subject of speculative fiction. It is an everyday choice made by millions of families, governments, and individuals. At the heart of this revolution lies a confluence of advances. In gene editing, technologies like CRISPR and its successors, in the speed and reach of global communication, and in the growing acceptance of technology in the most personal aspects of life. The first wave began with the elimination of inherited diseases, cystic fibrosis, Huntington's, sickle cell anemia. Families quietly embraced these interventions. Who wouldn't want a happier, healthier child, free from suffering? Soon, preemptive elimination of known diseases was routine in every developed nation. But scientific momentum seldom pauses for long. Medical necessity gave way to medical opportunity. Improvements to immune systems, resistance to viruses and cancers, enhancements to vision or muscle mass. Subtle tweaks at first, nothing that would seem outlandish on the surface. Yet the cumulative effect was profound. As the possibilities multiplied, the need to address questions of access, ethics, and social impact became urgent. What does it look like, day to day, when most people are genetically modified? Let's step into this world and experience it from every angle. Through the eyes of parents considering the future of their unborn child, of children growing up never knowing anything different, and of a society struggling to keep pace with its own innovation. In maternity clinics worldwide, the act of selecting your child's traits is as routine as choosing a color for the nursery. Genetic counselors meet with expectant parents, not to break the news of heartbreaking diagnoses, but to review a dazzling array of options. Would you like your child to be resistant to heart disease? How about a slightly faster metabolism, stronger bones, or perhaps a more acute sense of hearing? The choices are framed in reassuring, almost parental language, improving your child's chances for happiness, success, and health. The most basic package is universally covered by health insurance, elimination of hundreds of known genetic diseases, improvements to the immune system, minor boosts to major organs. But the packages don't end there. For a premium, parents can browse a menu of enhancements. Some choose athleticism, envisioning a future Olympic athlete or professional sports star. Others prioritize intelligence, seeking cognitive traits correlated with higher achievement. Yet others, wary of making their child exceptional in any way that might set them apart, choose a suite of average attributes, aiming to grant every possible basic advantage without pushing into the territory of the extraordinary. Schools adapt too, as the average capabilities of children shift upwards. The educational system, designed for neurotypical development, now welcomes a steadily growing group of children with optimized attention spans, faster pattern recognition abilities, and enhanced emotional regulation. New curricula are developed to challenge young minds, and teachers navigate classes where the old bell curve no longer holds. Fewer children are left behind. But at the far edge, a new kind of divergence emerges, between those with the latest genetic enhancements and those with only the basic or legacy edits. As generations pass, what was once future shock gives way to a new normal. Traditional discussions of nature versus nurture are reframed. Parents, policymakers, and ethicists consider new questions. How much of a person's character or achievement is determined by their genes when those genes have been so carefully selected or shaped? What does it mean to deserve success when a lucky roll of edited DNA can tilt the scales before birth? On the streets and in daily life, the changes are at once subtle and profound. People seem healthier, living longer, with illness debt pushed further and further into old age. Rates of common diseases plummet, putting less strain on healthcare systems. Lifespans steadily climb, as each decade brings a new round of updates, tweaks for neurodegeneration, improvements to tissue regeneration, reductions in the risk of cancer. The perception of aging itself changes. What once marked the beginning of decline now becomes another phase of sustained activity and engagement. Society, being the complex organism it is, finds ways to push back and adapt in unexpected ways. The job market, for instance, adjusts its baselines. Employers no longer ask whether a candidate has the stamina for overnight shifts or the memory for detailed analysis. Those traits are expected as a matter of course. Instead, softer skills, creativity, empathy, adaptability, rise to the fore. The old lines dividing the exceptional from the average are redrawn as new traits become desirable precisely because they're less easy to engineer. Of course, the normalization of genetic editing does not affect every community at the same pace or degree. Inequities, old and new, emerge. In wealthy nations, genetic enhancement becomes nearly universal, with governments mandating baseline edits as a matter of public health. In less affluent regions, the technology is slower to diffuse. A new kind of privilege emerges. Genetic privilege. Conferred before birth, not easily remedied by policy interventions or determined effort. This divides humanity along lines not only of wealth and education, but of biology itself. Visas and immigration policies now check for not just infectious diseases, but also for certain genetic standards, ostensibly to limit the spread of unedited or internationally frowned-upon traits. International aid programs compete to provide editing clinics alongside vaccination and nutrition initiatives, framing the eradication of disease and the gifting of enhancement as a new form of development assistance. Amid these technological advances, culture and values struggle to keep up. Movements arise, both embracing and rejecting the new reality. Bioconservatives, motivated by faith, philosophy, or simple nostalgia, resist genetic modification. Some communities enshrine the value of the natural, choosing to forego enhancements even as their children risk being left behind in key domains of health, learning, or employment. Arguments surface about the right to biological autonomy, not just the right to edit, but the right to decline. Yet even within enhanced society, questions of identity do not disappear. Young people grow up in a world where their very personalities, skills, and limits have been, to some extent, predetermined by others. Psychological counseling shifts to address questions of agency and existential purpose. Who am I really if so much about me was chosen before I was born? What does it mean to live authentically in a world where genes can be purchased, selected, or even updated retroactively, perhaps by gene therapy boosters? Legally and politically, the system bends and flexes around the new status quo. Laws governing what kinds of genetic modifications are allowed, or even required, are hotly debated. Many countries outlaw certain edits, those seen as radical, frivolous, or contrary to national values. International bodies set standards and guidelines, seeking to prevent a global arms race of superhumans or designer citizens. Still, black markets for illicit enhancements thrive, driven by a hunger for advantage or the simple thrill of rebellion. In athletics, the lines between fair competition and genetic doping are redrawn. Sporting bodies establish entire new leagues for modified and unmodified competitors. World records from the era before widespread genetic editing are largely unbreakable for the unedited, and fans debate the merit of new champions with superhuman reflexes or endurance. Some sports embrace the future, marketing competitions as the pinnacle of human achievement, whether engineered or not. Others cling to nostalgia, maintaining strict bans on any enhancement, however minor. Arts and culture, often the critics and mirrors of change, grapple with the impact of a world filled with edited people. Novels, films, and musicals explore themes of identity, agency, and fate. New genres emerge in literature and visual art, examining the uneasy dance between selfhood and design. Some artists use gene editing as a medium itself, bioluminescent tattoos, new shades of eye color, even performers who modulate their vocal cords for impossible ranges of sound. Romance and relationships adapt too. Dating apps allow users to filter potential matches by enhancement status, desired traits, or openness to gene editing for future children. Family conversations about tradition, heritage, and belonging grow more complicated as lineages are shaped as much by science as by ancestry. Unmodified people find solidarity, sometimes valorizing the old human qualities that cannot be so easily spliced or edited. In the wider world, the normalization of genetic enhancement has a profound impact on the very evolution of the human race. Where evolution once worked blindly over generations, natural selection is now supplemented, or even supplanted, by human selection. Certain inherited diseases all but disappear from the gene pool. Others, found valuable or even aesthetic, are reincorporated or tweaked for new expression. Human diversity, once celebrated in all its natural forms, is reimagined. Variation by choice, identity by design. Yet, alongside the remarkable benefits, cautionary tales also emerge. Some early attempts at enhancement result in unexpected complications. A gene thought to boost intelligence also increases risk of anxiety. An edit for increased muscle mass leads to unforeseen metabolic disorders. Doctors and scientists scramble to keep pace with both the desire for improvement and the lessons of complexity. Regulation and oversight evolve, with increasingly sophisticated modeling required before new edits are approved. Outside the individual, entire societies shift in response to the new normal. Insurance companies retool risk assessments, governments rethink public health planning, and ethical boards debate new scenarios at the frontiers of possibility. Even spirituality and religion adapt, some faiths incorporating genetic modification into their understanding of human stewardship, others issuing stern warnings about playing God. The debate over what it means to be human becomes not just a philosophical or religious question, but a practical one, woven into the fabric of everyday life. Returning to the lives of individuals, we witness moments both ordinary and profound. A child, born with enhanced memory and dexterity, devotes herself to the violin, shaping music with a subtlety and speed unknown to generations past. An unmodified teacher, beloved by students for his storytelling, contemplates whether to accept enhancements to extend his working life or remain himself. A group of friends, some modified, some not, debate the fairness of advantage, the nature of effort, and the beauty of imperfection. As decades pass, the interplay between tradition and technology weaves itself into every corner of society. Gene editing becomes just one more part of the toolkit with which parents shape their children's futures, like nutrition, education, and environment. Yet, unlike those factors, it is permanent, a legacy of choices and values passed on in invisible scripts, lasting not for years, but for lifetimes. Somewhere, in the not-so-distant future, the first genetically enhanced humans grow old. Their lives, once the subject of fevered debate and speculative fiction, are unremarkable except for the way they stand as the first of their kind. Some see themselves as pioneers, others as simple beneficiaries of a universal good. Still others worry about what may have been lost along the way, a sense of unpredictability, a faith in overcoming adversity, a humility before the mystery of what it means to become, rather than to be designed. Children born in this world no longer ask whether they are normal. They simply are, whatever normal has come to mean in a genetically designed age. Their challenges are new, shaped less by nature's indifference and more by history's choices. They face pressures unique to their era, to live up to the promise of their enhancements, to distinguish themselves amid a sea of equally gifted peers, to search for meaning at the intersection of fate and free will. Looking out across this world, we see a spectrum, a tapestry of lives shaped by gene editing, each thread woven by human hands. Some shine brighter than would have been possible in centuries past, their suffering eased, their potential realized. Others wrestle with new burdens, of expectation, of identity, of the knowledge that so much of what they are was chosen, not by them, but for them. Yet, above all, the story of genetically modified people becoming the norm is not the story of the triumph of science over nature. It is the story of humanity extending its reach while still wrestling with the timeless questions of who we are, who we wish to be, and what responsibilities we bear toward one another. For all the dazzling technology, the core human experience remains. The struggle for acceptance, the search for purpose, the longing for connection and meaning. Even in a world where genes are chosen with care, where health and talent are promised before birth, people still fall in love, suffer loss, confront uncertainty, and celebrate wonder. And so the journey continues, new questions rising from each advance, new stories waiting to be told, as humanity steps into an era shaped as much by the decisions we make as by the code written in our DNA. The future beckons, a tapestry awaiting its next generation of authors.